Omega challenges the Alpha King before the council, yet every wolf kneels to her unknown lineage. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Emily Morgan stood at the edge of the grand hall, her heart racing as the council members took their seats. It was supposed to be a simple matter, a decision on her fate, a decision that had already been made without her. She was an Omega. She had always been the outcast, the one looked down upon. But today, in the presence of the Alpha King himself, she would do something no one expected. She would challenge him. As she stepped forward, the room fell silent. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every eye in the room, from the grizzled council members to the powerful alphas and betas of the pack, was on her. They had all seen her as weak, a mere Omega unworthy of their attention. They had all thought that she was nothing. But Emily wasn't the same woman she had been a few days ago. She had learned things about herself that she could hardly believe. Her lineage, her connection to the powerful bloodline no one knew existed. And now, it was time to reveal it. "You will never have me, Alpha King," Emily declared, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. Nathaniel Blackthorne, the Alpha King, looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. His piercing silver eyes studied her as if she were a puzzle he couldn't quite figure out. His cold exterior was unshaken, but something about the way he watched her, his gaze intense, calculating, sent a shiver down her spine. "You have no right to challenge me, Omega," Nathaniel's voice boomed, strong and commanding. "You are nothing. Your place is at my feet, like the rest of your kind." The words stung, but Emily held her ground. "Perhaps you don't know who I am," she replied, her voice unwavering. "Perhaps you don't know what blood flows through my veins." For a moment, a flicker of confusion passed through Nathaniel's eyes. He stood tall, unmoving, but something in the air had shifted. The council members watched, unsure of what was happening, their curiosity piqued. Emily's pulse raced, but she refused to back down. "I am the last of the Moonfire line," she said, her words cutting through the silence like a sword. "The true heir to the throne that has been lost for generations. And I will not bow to you." The room was still. No one moved, no one spoke. And then, to Emily's surprise, the Alpha King stepped forward. His presence was overwhelming, the weight of his authority pressing down on her. "The Moonfire line," he repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "You lie. There is no such thing." Emily shook her head. "I am the last of my kind. And you will kneel before me." The words hung in the air like a challenge, a declaration of war. Nathaniel's expression hardened, but he didn't move. Instead, the council members began to stir, their whispers growing louder. Emily's heart raced, but she remained calm. She had waited for this moment her entire life. "I am not some broken Omega," she said, her voice rising with the power she had just discovered within herself. "I am the true Alpha. And you will respect me." As Emily finished speaking, something unexpected happened. One by one, the wolves in the room, including the Alpha King himself, began to kneel. It wasn't just a show of respect, it was a submission. Emily could feel the weight of their acknowledgement, the power of her lineage, flooding the room. The moment she had been waiting for had finally arrived. She was no longer the weak Omega. She was the one in control. Nathaniel Blackthorne, the Alpha King, stared up at her, his eyes wide with disbelief and something else. "Recognition. You are the one," he whispered. Emily nodded, her heart swelling with the realization. The council room, once filled with mockery and disdain, was now silent in reverence. And Emily Morgan, the Omega who had been cast aside, was now the one everyone knelt before. Emily stood tall, the weight of the room's silent submission pressing down on her shoulders. Her heart pounded in her chest, the realization of what had just transpired washing over her in waves. The Alpha King, Nathaniel Blackthorne, and the entire Council of Wolves, all of them, had bowed to her. It was a moment she had never imagined possible. She had been rejected, dismissed, and belittled for so long, and now, here she was, standing at the center of it all, her true power finally recognized. The air was thick with tension as Emily scanned the room, her eyes moving from one kneeling wolf to another. She could feel their gaze, their uncertainty, but also their awe. The Alpha King, once so confident in his rule, now knelt before her, and for the first time, she felt a surge of something greater than fear, something that felt like destiny. Nathaniel's silver eyes met hers, his expression unreadable, but his posture remained humble, a king brought to his knees. She couldn't help but wonder what he was thinking. Was he surprised? Afraid? Or was it something else entirely? She could feel the weight of his gaze, heavy with the knowledge that he had just witnessed something that would change the course of their world forever. "Rise," Emily said, her voice steady and commanding. She was no longer the broken Omega, the one discarded by fate. She was a force to be reckoned with. Slowly, Nathaniel stood, his body towering over hers, but there was a softness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "You are more than I ever expected," he said, his voice low, but there was a hint of admiration in it that made Emily's heart skip a beat. "And what did you expect?" she asked, her gaze unwavering as she held his stare. "A weak Omega," Nathaniel admitted, his voice filled with reluctant honesty. "But you are far from weak." Emily felt a flicker of something deep inside her at his words, a mix of pride and relief. She had always known there was more to her than anyone had ever realized. And now, the world was finally beginning to see it. The council members remained silent, their eyes flicking between Emily and the Alpha King, unsure of what would happen next. Emily's heart was still racing, but she kept her composure, holding her ground with the confidence that had been missing for so long. She could feel the shift in the air, the moment when everything changed. Nathaniel's gaze softened, and for the first time since meeting him, Emily saw something in him that wasn't just power and dominance, it was a vulnerability, a recognition that the world he had built was no longer enough. "What happens now?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite the swirl of emotions inside her. Nathaniel's lips curled into a faint smile, though there was still a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. "Now, we see where this takes us," he replied, his tone contemplative. "You have more power than I ever anticipated. And I believe you may be the one to lead us into a new era." The words hung in the air like a promise, and Emily couldn't help but feel the weight of them. She had never imagined she would be in this position, standing before the Alpha King, with all the wolves kneeling to her. But here she was, her lineage, her bloodline, finally coming to light. She had always been more than they thought. And now, it was time for them to see it. "I don't want your throne," Emily said firmly, her voice unwavering. "I want to change the way we live, the way we treat each other. We can't keep living in this cycle of power and domination. It's time for something different." Nathaniel regarded her with a mixture of surprise and respect. "And you think you can change that?" he asked, his voice tinged with a hint of admiration. "I know I can," Emily replied, her voice strong. "Together, we can create something better." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling over everyone like a heavy fog. Nathaniel nodded slowly, a gesture of understanding. "Then let's start," he said, his voice steady with resolve. "Together." Emily felt a surge of determination rise within her, a new fire that burned bright in her chest. This was just the beginning. She was no longer the Omega who was rejected. She was the one in control now. And the wolves would follow her lead. Emily stood at the head of the council room, her gaze sweeping over the assembly of alphas and betas, their faces a mixture of awe and uncertainty. The air was thick with tension as her words echoed in the silence. Nathaniel Blackthorne, the Alpha King, stood beside her, his usual commanding presence subdued, a quiet respect emanating from him. The wolves in the room had witnessed a transformation, a shift in power that was impossible to ignore. Emily had spoken of change, of a future where the cycles of domination and submission would no longer define their lives. And for the first time, it seemed as though they were willing to listen. "What exactly is it you propose, Emily?" asked one of the older council members, his voice gruff but not unkind. The world has functioned this way for centuries. What makes you think it can change? Emily took a step forward, her posture proud and unwavering. The confidence that had once eluded her now filled every inch of her being. She was no longer the Omega who had been discarded, no longer the one who had been silenced. She was a force to be reckoned with. I don't think it will change overnight, she replied, her voice steady and calm. But I believe we can start by treating each other with respect. By valuing every member of our packs, not just for their rank or power, but for their worth as individuals. No more being defined by the moon or by bloodline alone. The room was silent, and Emily could feel the weight of their stares. She could almost hear the gears turning in their minds, the doubt, the resistance, but also the curiosity. For so long, the wolves had been bound by tradition. Their world had been defined by dominance, submission, and rigid hierarchies. The idea of something different was foreign, almost impossible. But now, here she was, standing before them, challenging everything they had known. And the Alpha King? One of the younger betas asked, his tone skeptical. How does he fit into this new world you envision? Emily turned to Nathaniel, her eyes meeting his. There was no hesitation, no doubt in her heart. He had been her ally in this. He had seen her for who she truly was, not just the Omega who had been cast aside, but the one with the power to lead, to bring change. Nathaniel met her gaze, and for a moment, there was a shared understanding between them. He stepped forward, his voice clear and authoritative. I stand by her, he said, his words simple but heavy with meaning. The future of our packs doesn't lie in the old ways. It lies in the strength we find in each other, in the bonds we build, not the ones we break. The council members exchanged glances, the shift in the room palpable. Some still looked uncertain, others were hesitant, but there was a spark of something new in their eyes. Respect. Emily could feel it, the quiet acceptance that had once been so far out of reach. We will not follow blindly, another beta said, his voice quiet but firm. But we will listen. Emily nodded, her heart swelling with both relief and anticipation. This was just the beginning. She had known it wouldn't be easy. She had known that challenging centuries of tradition would not be simple. But as she stood there, beside Nathaniel, she felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything she had ever known. That's all I ask, she said, her voice unwavering. Just listen. And then decide for yourselves. The room remained quiet, but there was no more mockery, no more disbelief. Emily had done it. She had made them listen. And for the first time, she felt the weight of the future in her hands. The future that would no longer be defined by submission, but by unity. She knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in her life, she was not alone. Nathaniel stood with her, and the council, though unsure, was beginning to see the possibilities. Together, they would build a new world. A world where power was no longer about dominance, but about the strength of their bonds. This is only the beginning, Emily thought, her mind racing with the possibilities. We have only just begun to change everything. And as she looked around the room, at the faces of those who had once looked down on her, she knew that her journey was far from over. But now, she was ready. She had the strength, the conviction, and the support to change the world. And she would. With every step, they would move closer to a future where all wolves, no matter their rank or status, would be valued for who they were, not what they were. The path would be difficult, but it would be worth it. Because this time, Emily knew she was on the right side of history. Emily stood in the heart of the council room, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on her shoulders. The Alpha King, Nathaniel Blackthorne, had pledged his support, and for the first time, it felt as though the impossible was within reach. She had spoken her truth, and the room had listened. But that was only the beginning. The path to true change was never easy, and Emily knew that even though they had taken the first step, the real challenge lay ahead. The council members were still divided, some of them skeptical, others intrigued, but none of them were ready to fully embrace the vision she had for the future. You think this will change everything? A beta council member asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. How can you be so sure? The way things have been is the only way we know. You are just an Omega. The word stung, but Emily stood tall, her resolve unshaken. She had been told she was nothing all her life. Now, she had the power to prove them wrong. Because it's not about rank or bloodline, Emily replied, her voice strong and steady. It's about what we do with the power we have. The world doesn't need more rulers, it needs leaders who understand the value of unity and respect. I may be an Omega, but that doesn't define me. It never should have. The council member's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. The silence in the room grew heavy, but Emily felt a flicker of hope. She was reaching them. Slowly, but surely. Nathaniel stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. His eyes, once cold and distant, now held something different, something warmer. Emily is right, he said, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone listen. Our packs have been divided for too long. We have let power control us, and we have allowed fear to govern our actions. But no more. It's time to move forward, not as separate factions, but as one. There was a ripple of surprise among the council members, but none spoke against him. They had all seen the strength in his eyes, the quiet leadership that came from within. Nathaniel had always ruled with authority, but now he was showing them a new way. A way that didn't rely on dominance, but on collaboration. Emily felt a surge of pride. Nathaniel was with her, not just as an ally, but as a partner. They were no longer two separate forces. They were united. The world is changing, Nathaniel continued, his voice steady. And so must we. The future belongs to those who are willing to embrace it. Together, we will build a world where power is shared, where respect is earned, and where every wolf, regardless of their status, is valued for who they are. The room was still, the weight of his words settling over them like a blanket. For the first time, Emily felt a deep sense of belonging. She was no longer an outcast, a broken Omega. She was a leader, standing beside the Alpha King, ready to reshape the future. The council members exchanged glances, their uncertainty slowly giving way to acceptance. It wouldn't be easy, Emily knew. There would be opposition, challenges, and setbacks. But they were ready. She was ready. And with Nathaniel by her side, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. I won't let this go, Emily said, her voice resolute. I won't let fear hold us back any longer. This is just the beginning. Nathaniel nodded, his gaze meeting hers. Together, we will change the world, he said, his voice filled with conviction. And in that moment, Emily knew it was true. The road ahead would be long, but they would face it together, united in their vision for a better future. A future where every wolf, no matter their rank, had a place at the table. The world was changing, and Emily Morgan was leading the way. Emily stood in the courtyard, the weight of the day still heavy on her shoulders. The council had left, their murmurs of approval and skepticism still echoing in her mind. Nathaniel stood beside her, his presence as steady as ever, but there was a new sense of tension between them, an unspoken understanding that things were changing, not just for the packs, but for them, too. She could feel the shift in the air, the tension that had once been a constant in her life now replaced by something else. Something she couldn't quite define yet, but something that felt like possibility. You did well today, Nathaniel said, his voice low but filled with genuine respect. Emily glanced at him, her heart swelling at his words. He had always been the Alpha King, the one who commanded respect, but today, she had seen a different side of him, a side that was willing to listen, to share power, to change. It wasn't just me, she replied, her voice steady but tired. We did this together. Nathaniel nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the land, and for a moment, Emily felt as though everything was possible. Together, he repeated. But the hard part is just beginning. The council may have listened, but that doesn't mean they will follow. Emily felt a chill run through her, but she steadied herself. I know, she said. But we have to start somewhere. We've already begun the process. They'll follow when they see the change in action. Nathaniel looked at her, his expression softening. You're more than I ever expected, Emily. I've always believed in strength, in power, but you've shown me that there's more to being a leader than just dominance. His words caught her off guard, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She had never imagined herself as a leader. She had always been the one overlooked, the one cast aside. But now, standing beside Nathaniel, she could see a new path forming in front of her, a path that was hers to walk. It's not just about power, she said, her voice soft but firm. It's about respect. About understanding that every wolf has something to offer, no matter their rank. We're all part of the same pack, and we need to start acting like it. Nathaniel's eyes softened, and for the first time, Emily saw a glimmer of something vulnerable in them. I've always believed that an alpha should be strong, unyielding, he said, his voice quiet. But you've shown me that strength isn't just about standing tall. It's about standing together. Emily's heart swelled at his words. She had always known there was more to leadership than brute force. But hearing Nathaniel, the Alpha King, say it out loud was something else entirely. It was validation, a sign that the change she sought was possible. We're just getting started, she said, her voice filled with determination. There's a lot of work ahead, but I know we can do it. Nathaniel smiled, a rare smile that reached his eyes. I believe you, Emily. And I'm with you. No matter what happens next, we'll face it together. The words felt like a promise, one that Emily knew he would keep. She had never imagined that she would be standing here, beside the Alpha King, as equals. But now, with their shared vision, she knew that anything was possible. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily turned her gaze to the future. It was uncertain, yes, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. With Nathaniel by her side, and the council slowly warming to their cause, there was nothing that could stop them. Together, they would reshape their world. And she would be at the forefront, leading the way, not as an Omega, but as the leader she was always meant to be. Emily walked through the halls of the Blackthorn Castle, her steps steady but her mind racing. The council meeting had ended, and the support they had gained was both a victory and a burden. Change was coming, but it would not come easily. She could feel the weight of the decision she had made, the responsibility of leading not just the Omega Wolves, but all the packs. Nathaniel walked beside her, his presence as steady as ever, but Emily could sense the tension in him as well. They were both feeling the pressure. Do you really think they will follow? Nathaniel asked, his voice low, but filled with curiosity. Emily looked up at him, surprised by the question. Of course they will, she replied, though the uncertainty lingered in her voice. They may be hesitant now, but when they see the changes in action, they'll follow. They have to. Nathaniel's silver eyes met hers, and for a moment, there was a quiet understanding between them. You're right, he said, his tone softening. You've shown them something they've never seen before, someone who is not afraid to challenge the old ways. Emily smiled faintly, grateful for his support. We've both shown them that, she said, her confidence growing with each word. But this is just the beginning. There's so much more to do. The halls of the castle seemed to stretch endlessly before them, each step taking them deeper into the heart of their plans. They had already begun to make changes within the pack, speaking with the council members who had been open to their ideas, but the real challenge would come when the rest of the pack saw what they were doing. What happens now? Nathaniel asked as they reached a large door that led to the courtyard. Emily paused, her hand resting on the handle. Now, we begin the hard work, she said. We start with the small things, building trust, showing them that change doesn't have to be scary. And then we tackle the bigger issues, the ones that have held us back for so long. Nathaniel nodded, his gaze thoughtful. And you think we can do it? Emily turned to face him, her eyes bright with determination. I know we can. They stepped into the courtyard, the cool evening air brushing against their skin. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the stone. Emily could feel the weight of the coming days, the work that lay ahead, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. We'll need to be patient, Nathaniel said, his voice quiet but filled with resolve. The packs will need time to adjust to the idea of us leading them together. It won't be easy. Emily nodded, feeling the truth of his words. I know. But I've never been afraid of hard work. And with you by my side, I know we can make this work. Nathaniel's expression softened, and for a brief moment, Emily saw a side of him that few ever did: vulnerable, unsure, but hopeful. I believe in you, Emily. I always have, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Emily felt a rush of warmth at his words, and she knew that, together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The path to change would be difficult, but it would also be worth it. They would create a new world, one where respect, unity, and trust reigned over dominance and power. We'll do this, Emily said, her voice steady. For the future of the packs, for every wolf who has ever been overlooked or cast aside. We'll do this together. Nathaniel placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. Together, he agreed, and for the first time, Emily felt a true sense of belonging. She wasn't just an Omega. She wasn't just a leader. She was part of something bigger. And with Nathaniel by her side, she was ready to change the world. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Emily was no longer afraid. With her strength, Nathaniel's support, and the unity they were building, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. Together, they would create a new future. And that future began now. Emily stood in front of the grand hall, the weight of the evening pressing on her. Nathaniel stood beside her. His presence as steady as always, but she could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation of the decisions that would shape their future. The council had gathered again, and today was different. Today, they would take the first real step toward the future they had envisioned. Do you think they are ready? Nathaniel asked, his voice steady but with an underlying edge of concern. Emily looked up at him, her eyes meeting his, filled with determination. They will have to be, she said softly, her heart racing in her chest. She knew this was not going to be easy. Changing the way the packs had lived for centuries would take time and patience. But they were ready. The council members began to file into the hall, the atmosphere heavy with their uncertainty and anticipation. Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing with the thoughts of the challenges ahead. The old ways had held them in chains for so long. She couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. This is it, she whispered, her voice filled with resolve. Nathaniel gave a small nod, his expression unreadable, but his eyes showed something she had come to recognize as trust. They had come so far, and now it was time to take the next step. We will make them see, he said. We will show them the power of unity. The room grew quiet as the council members took their seats, their eyes settling on Emily and Nathaniel. They could feel the weight of the moment, the change in the air. Emily stepped forward, standing tall, her voice unwavering as she addressed the assembly. Today, we begin a new chapter, she began, her words echoing in the room. We will no longer be divided by old grudges, by power or status. We will no longer be defined by the rules that have kept us from seeing each other for who we truly are. Today, we begin to build a future where every wolf, regardless of their rank, is valued for who they are. Where respect and unity are the cornerstones of our world. She paused, allowing her words to settle in the room. The council members exchanged looks, some skeptical, some thoughtful. Emily could see the resistance in their eyes, the fear of change, but she also saw something else. Curiosity. Hope. Nathaniel stepped forward, his voice steady and powerful. The future is not something that is handed to us, he said. It is something we build. Together. This is not just about me or Emily. This is about all of us, working together to create a world where no one is left behind, where every wolf has a place and a purpose. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the room. We must let go of the past and look forward to what we can achieve. A world of respect. A world of strength. The room was still, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Emily could feel the shift in the room, the hesitant acceptance. I know it won't be easy, she continued, her voice calm and filled with conviction. There will be challenges, setbacks, and obstacles. But we cannot afford to stand still. The world is changing, and we must change with it. She turned to Nathaniel, their eyes meeting once again. Together, we will lead the way. Nathaniel nodded, a quiet smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Together, he agreed. The council members were quiet, but there was a shift in the air, a sense of possibility. Slowly, one by one, they began to nod, some still uncertain, but others visibly moved by the words they had just heard. Emily knew it was only the beginning, but it was a start. They were ready to lead. They were ready to build something new. And as they stood there, side by side, Emily felt the weight of their shared future, one of hope, strength, and unity. She was no longer the Omega who had been cast aside. She was a leader, standing alongside Nathaniel, ready to change the world. Together, they would shape the future, one step at a time. The days following the council meeting were filled with a quiet tension, as Emily and Nathaniel worked tirelessly to implement the changes they had promised. The pack was slowly beginning to adjust to the new reality, though not without resistance. The old ways, deeply ingrained in the culture of the wolves, were not easily set aside. But Emily was undeterred. She knew the path to change would not be smooth, but it was the right path. She had already started meeting with the pack's leaders, making sure they understood the importance of the unity they were building. Nathaniel stood by her side, a constant source of support, but even he could see the weight of the challenge ahead. "We need to be patient," Nathaniel said one evening as they walked through the castle's vast corridors, the distant sounds of the pack's activities echoing through the stone walls. "It will take time. But we are making progress." Emily nodded, her thoughts racing. "I know," she said. "But it feels like we are running out of time. Every day, the old ways creep back in. I can feel it, there's still fear, doubt. They're not ready to embrace the change." Nathaniel's eyes softened as he glanced at her, his voice gentle but firm. "Change is always difficult. But the fact that we've gotten this far is proof that we can succeed. We just have to keep pushing forward." Emily stopped walking and turned to face him, her heart pounding. "Do you think they really believe in this? Or are they just following because they have to?" Nathaniel regarded her with a mixture of understanding and concern. "There will always be doubt, Emily. But the ones who matter will follow, even if it takes time for them to fully accept the change." Emily took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "I hope you're right," she said softly. "I'm starting to believe it, too. But it's not just about the council or the leaders. It's about the wolves, the ones who have been told for so long that they are nothing. I need them to believe, too." Nathaniel reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And they will. You're the one who has shown them what true leadership is. You've already proven that you're more than just an Omega. You are a leader, and they see that now. You just have to keep believing in them, as much as they need to believe in you." Emily's heart swelled at his words. She had always felt like an outsider, like she didn't belong in a world that had rejected her. But now, standing here with Nathaniel, she felt a strength she had never known before. It wasn't just about power, it was about trust, respect, and unity. "I will," she said, her voice steady. "I'll keep believing. For all of us." The days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, Emily felt the pack slowly begin to shift. There were still moments of doubt, still resistance, but the cracks in the old ways were becoming more and more apparent. Emily had always known that she wasn't meant to follow, she was meant to lead. And now, she could see that the others were beginning to follow her, too. One evening, as she and Nathaniel stood watching the sunset from the castle's balcony, Emily felt a surge of hope. The world was changing, and she was part of that change. "Do you feel it?" she asked quietly, her voice filled with awe. Nathaniel looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. "I do," he said. "The winds are changing, and we are leading the way." Emily nodded, her heart filled with gratitude. "Together, we will make sure that no wolf is ever left behind again." Nathaniel's hand found hers, and for a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of their shared vision filling the space between them. The road ahead would not be easy, but they were no longer afraid. Together, they would build a future where every wolf had a place, where unity and respect would reign over fear and power. And with each step, they would move closer to the world they had always dreamed of, a world where change was not feared, but embraced. A world where Emily Morgan, the Omega who had been cast aside, would lead them all to a brighter future. Emily stood at the edge of the council hall, the weight of the decisions that had been made over the past few weeks settling over her. The path they had started was long, and though progress had been slow, the changes were undeniable. The pack had begun to transform. The tension in the air had shifted, and the resistance was still there, but it was weakening. She felt it in the way the wolves interacted with one another, in the way the leaders began to speak with respect. It was not perfect, but it was a start. Nathaniel stood beside her, his presence a steady anchor as always. Together, they had faced the challenges and begun to reshape their world. It wasn't easy, and it never would be, but they were building something real. "How does it feel?" Nathaniel asked, his voice low but filled with something Emily could only describe as pride. She turned to look at him, seeing the quiet strength in his eyes, a reflection of her own. "It feels like we're on the right path," Emily said, her voice steady. "But we still have so much to do. We can't rest yet." Nathaniel smiled softly, a rare expression of warmth that made Emily's heart flutter. "You're right. But we've come so far. Just a few months ago, you were standing alone, unheard, rejected. And now look at us." He gestured to the room behind them, where the council members had gathered to discuss the next steps. Some were still cautious, some hesitant, but there was a quiet respect in their eyes now. Emily felt a surge of emotion at his words. She had never imagined that she would be standing here, beside Nathaniel, shaping the future of their packs. She had always been the outsider, the one who didn't fit into their world. But now, she was the one leading them. "We've done this together," Emily said, her voice soft but strong. "You and me, Nathaniel. We're changing this world together." Nathaniel's eyes met hers, and for a moment, everything else seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, standing side by side, ready to face whatever came next. "Together," he agreed, his voice filled with quiet determination. As they walked into the council room, Emily could feel the shift in the air. The pack was changing, and they were at the forefront of it. There would be challenges ahead, of course, but Emily knew they would face them together. She had never been so sure of anything in her life. "We've come a long way," Emily said as they took their seats at the head of the table. "But we still have much to do. We need to make sure the changes we've started continue to grow. We need to show the pack that this isn't just about us. It's about all of us." Nathaniel nodded, his expression serious. "Agreed. This isn't just about you and me, Emily. It's about a new future for all wolves. A future where we all have a place, no matter our rank or bloodline." The room was filled with the murmurs of the council members, but Emily felt a sense of calm wash over her. They were finally getting it. They were beginning to see the vision that Nathaniel and she had been working toward. It wouldn't be easy, but it was possible. "We can't force change," Emily continued, "but we can show them what it looks like. We can lead by example. And in time, they'll follow." There was a silence in the room as the council members absorbed her words. She could see the doubt still in their eyes, but also something else. Curiosity. Hope. The seeds had been planted, and now, it was time to nurture them. Nathaniel placed a hand on the table, his gaze steady. "It won't happen overnight. But together, we will build a new world. One where no wolf is left behind." Emily met his gaze, feeling the truth of his words. They had done it. They had come so far, and now, there was no turning back. Together, they would lead the way into a new future, a future built on unity, respect, and strength. As the council session continued, Emily felt a quiet pride settle in her chest. They weren't just making history. They were living it. And they were doing it together.